Hello and welcome to this special bonus episode of The Dairy Edge. Teagasc are running a weekly Let's Talk Dairy webinar series, which is also being made available as a podcast. On this week's webinar, Micheál O'Leary joins Stuart Childs to give insight into the new nitrogen planner on the PastureBase Ireland app.
Okay, good morning everyone and welcome to this Thursday's Let's Talk Dairy webinar. Today I'm joined by Micheál O'Leary, who's head of PastureBase. So Micheál is going to talk to us today about some changes that have been made to PastureBase, particularly around nitrogen planning and the availability of a nitrogen planner now on PastureBase to help people to plan their nitrogen applications. So we're going to hand over to Micheál straight away because we've both are tied up at 11 o'clock, so we need to get finished up. So ask plenty of questions. Micheál is mad to get questions on this to try and make sure that he can get across the message as clearly as possible to you what the new aspect of the program is doing for you. So don't be shy. Make sure to pop in the questions therefore. So I'll hand over to you there, so Micheál.
Thanks, Stuart, and good morning, everyone. And like Stuart said, we'll just go through the new nitrogen planner, which is available on PastureBase there with, I suppose, the last month or so. It has been added into the application. So we just close this for 1 second. So look, we'll just log in here to a demo farm, and we'll go right through the plan. And we can take questions there, Stuart, during it, or we can wait till after, until the end. So you can see here, I suppose, the left-hand menu. You can see this fertilizer slurry example here. And if we just scroll down here, we can see that there's a new nitrogen plan here. Is the option. So if you just click on that there, and it'll just bring you to, I suppose, just a screen here where we just give it a name, for example. So we just say, let's talk dairy, for example, for this morning. The year is 2021 this year, and I suppose the total kilos of chemical nitrogen per hectare. So that just defaults to 250 kilos. Again, whatever target you want for your own farm, maybe it's 200 kilos, 220, or whatever the case may be. So that figure there can be edited. So then if you just click on continue, and I suppose we're brought in, I suppose, to the first screen of the plan. There's probably 3 stages in setting up the plan. And the first one here is calculating the amount of slurry which is on the farm. This is probably calculated fairly crude, and it's probably a rough calculation, to say the least. We're just calculating the slurry which comes from the livestock. So you can see here you have the different livestock types down the left-hand side. You have the number of stock, how long were they housed for. We have this weekly cubic meters of slurry then produced, and then I suppose we're adding it up here then. We're adding it up to see how much each stock type then is producing. So this,
you're purely looking at winter slurry there.
Yeah, so there's no collecting yards, there's no effluent from slurry pits, for example, or from dirty water tanks, etc. But I suppose you can see, I suppose, at one point as well that all these boxes are editable. So, for example, if you knew how many tanks of slurry you had, or if you knew the dimensions of your slurry tanks, you can also put them in, we'll say, in as tanks rather than cows. So, for example, if you had a round tower, for example, you could just put in one and maybe 250,000 into this figure in order to get 250,000 gallons, for example. So this farm here that we're using, I think it's a 30-hectare farm. So we just put in the number of cows, we'll say. We keep it round figures. We go for a 4-month winter. Then maybe some weanlings on the farm. They might be in a bit longer. And then maybe some in-calf heifers again. We'll just go with 20. I suppose we put them in for the 4-month winter as well. So we can see up the top right-hand corner here, I suppose, the total number of gallons of slurry is adding up here, or that's what's available on the farm. If you had other stock types, they can be quickly added here on the right hand side here, but just add new stock button. Or if you wanted to remove any stock types, you can just click on the delete button here. So at this stage now we have our slurry calculated for the farm, and I suppose we can just click on save there just to make sure that that's saved. So then just moving on to the next section, and we're just brought on here to the paddocks which are on the farm. So we have our paddock code here and paddock name on the left-hand side, the area in each paddock. We have this apply slurry button here as well. So at the moment, all the paddocks here are getting an application of slurry. And then just to draw your attention here to the right-hand side, to the paddock use. So you can see that they're all defaulted there to grazing. But if we click into this option here, there's 5 different options in which you can choose from. There's grazing plus 1 cut of silage, grazing plus 2 cuts of silage, and then there's grazing where there's a large proportion of white clover in the sward, so greater than 25% on average for the year. So I suppose based on the use of your particular paddock, I suppose we'll be able to, I suppose, give a monthly breakdown of the amount of nitrogen that you need to apply. For example, for a grazing paddock, you're going to be applying nitrogen every month. If it's grazing plus 1 cut of silage, you're probably not going to be spreading fertilizer in April, for example, and the same then with the 2 cut silage. Then I suppose if you have paddocks with a lot of clover, I suppose we want to reduce the clover or reduce the chemical nitrogen when there's a lot of clover in the sward. So we're talking about kind of June, July, kind of August time, and we'll go through that there again later.
There's the default thing there, Micheál, to apply slurry to everything. We'll say you have the option there, obviously, of not applying slurry to some fields. We'll say there might be fields that may just not be appropriate to travel with slurry tankers or whatever on some farms, obviously. So, but does it default to apply slurry to everything, or do you have to tick the box?
Yeah, it defaults, I suppose, to every for every paddock to get slurry. But for example, here we can just untick the first 5 there, for example. So we're not going to spread any slurry here on the first 5 paddocks. And yeah, you're dead right, Stuart. You look, maybe you have maybe a high fertility status maybe on these particular paddocks, or trafficability, or maybe whatever the case may be, I suppose. So if we just, I suppose, change some of these statuses here, we'll say, for example, these paddocks down the bottom, they're a long ways away from the parlour, and they usually get closed up for silage, for 1 cut of silage. So if we just change the last 5 there, maybe, for example, and we go grazing, and we'll take 1 cut of silage from these paddocks. And then maybe just paddock 10, for example, there's a lot of clover in paddock 10, so we'll just put it in as grazing, and with greater than 25% clover. So at the moment now, I suppose all our paddocks, we have a use for all our paddocks. So the majority of them are going to be used for grazing for the year, and the last 5 here, there's going to be, I suppose, a big cut of silage or a first cut silage taken off the last 5. Then I suppose just to summarize, then I suppose we have our different statuses here. We have 12 paddocks for grazing, 5 paddocks, 1 cut of silage and grazing, 1 clover paddock, and we've no, I suppose, grazing plus 2 cuts of silage. This paddock's not used for example, they might be a calf paddock, or a lame cow paddock, or a sick paddock, or whatever, that maybe you don't really spread fertilizer on, so you can just put it into that status there, paddocks not included. So our grazing paddocks, or paddocks that are dedicated for grazing for the year, they account there roughly for 2/3 of all paddocks, just less than 19 hectares, and the grazing plus 1 cut of silage is about 8 hectares and about 28%. Then I suppose just moving down, I suppose this is an important bit, important screen down the bottom here. It just displays the percentage of nitrogen, of chemical nitrogen, which is going to be applied per month. So the first screen we went into, I suppose, we decided that we were going to spread 250 kilos of nitrogen per hectare for the year. So that's where the 250 comes from here. And then we break out this 250 per month. So this is the percentages here. So 11% of the 250 kilos of N is going to be applied in January, February. 11% is going to be applied in March, 14% in April, and so on for the rest of the year. So you can see, I suppose, for the grazing, one cut of silage, you can see that there's a lot of nitrogen going out here to grow the crop of silage in probably late March. Then I suppose it's closed. There's no fertilizer going out in April. Probably cut mid to the end of May, and I suppose then again we're applying fertilizer again in June. And just I suppose one particular, you can see that all these boxes here are editable. So for example, if you didn't want to spread 250 kilos of nitrogen on the clover paddocks, you can easily reduce that to 200 or to 150 or whatever you're happier with. And again, I suppose not all farms are the same, and I suppose different parts of the country, different soil types, rainfall patterns, etc. So if you're on a heavy soil, for example, and you can't spread, or you're not able to spread fertilizer generally in January, February, you can remove 11 out of that box there and just put in 0, for example, and all the rest of the percentages then will update.
Will you just do that there as an example, Micheál, just for the sake of it?
So if we just put in 0 here, we can see that I suppose the percentages then all increase for the remainder of the year, in order to keep the 100% and the 250 kilos out. So we can show you, I suppose, just changing the kilos in the next screen. So that's basically kind of, I suppose, our plan set out. We have our slurry calculated. We have an idea what our paddocks are doing for the year as regards grazing and silage. And then I suppose we have how much nitrogen we're going to apply then on a monthly basis. So if we just click on save and continue then down the bottom here, and it'll probably bring you in here. Just I suppose this is kind of where we start talking about slurry, different rates of slurry, and I suppose we need to choose what type of fertilizer we're going to apply on the farm for the year. So I suppose this is kind of a plan maybe that maybe you could do probably in early in the year, early January, before you apply any fertilizer or slurry. And the first section here, I suppose we're just talking about the grazing paddocks. And the green lines here, I suppose, are for the slurry application, and underneath then, I suppose, in the white area, that's your chemical fertilizer. So the green here is organic, and the white here is chemical. So for example, if we want to go out in January, February, we'd probably in the springtime here, and we'll just go out to Dribble Bar, for example, it's first there on the list. And I want to put out 2,000 gallons of slurry per acre. That equates then to 21 kilos of nitrogen per hectare. And if we wanted to convert, we convert that then just to units of nitrogen per acre, which is about 17. And I suppose we can see here the total organic nitrogen coming from that slurry is the 21 kilos there. So that's I suppose the 12 paddocks that are getting the slurry.
I suppose Micheál, just that's using the arbitrary figure for the nitrogen for that slurry then, we'd say, because we've done a bit of testing there now over this winter period with a good number of farmers, and there's big variation. So, but that's using your kind of the department figure for the slurry, isn't it?
Yeah, so we'll be using the figures out of the Green Book. Yeah. And I suppose that would have been one, I suppose, request that we have got, that if you are testing slurry, is it possible to put in those results and to use those values for your own slurry? Yeah. And I suppose we will be putting that in, we'll have that in there for January 2022, that you're able to put in, I suppose, the values for your own farm. As you said, they vary quite a lot from farm to farm, and depending on the storage method, it can vary quite a bit.
Yeah. Because like we had one farm there, just springs to mind that at 3,000 gallons to the acre is putting out 36 units of nitrogen, so actually scaled it back now this year. Like,
oh yeah, that's fairly good
all
stuff.
Tank storage, covered tank storage predominantly, like.
Yeah, and rainwater and surface water kept out of it anyway.
Yeah.
So I suppose just coming back to the plan, just that's our slurry gone in. Maybe if you want to spread more slurry later on in the year, you can select whichever option you want here. And then I suppose if we move to the chemical nitrogen here. So again, there's a big long list of different fertilizer types here. So if we go with something like protected urea, for example, this particular product of protected urea, there is 46% nitrogen in it, and we want to apply 11% of our 250 kilos. 11% of 250 kilos equals 27 kilos of nitrogen, which equates to 22 units of nitrogen per acre. And in order, I suppose, to hit our target there of 27 kilos, we need to apply half a bag of this product in order to get our 22.5 units per acre. So just to go through that again there, it's easy enough to get confused with different terms here, probably on the left-hand side. So we're after selecting our protected urea.
That automatically will populate your percentage of nitrogen then, depending on the product that you pick.
Exactly, yeah. So the nitrogen in this particular product is 46 units. And from the previous screen, I suppose we want to apply 11% of 250 kilos in January, February. And 11% is 27.5 kilos. And to convert that to units is 22.5. And then to convert that to bags, it's half a bag. So I suppose it's just to be careful, I suppose, or be wary that there are a lot of terms there. So just take your time going down through them. And then just to move on, I suppose again you just keep going in with your different fertilizers. Generally from time to time, I suppose we're all spreading the same products probably. So we can come in here again with another half bag urea. Then you might change to something like 18612, for example. So maybe a bag and a half of 18612 there in April. And then maybe you'd come back to protected urea there again, but probably something with a bit of sulfur in it. So probably something like, we'd go with the highest sulfur there, maybe 7% sulfur. Again, just less than a bag of it there, 0.9 of a bag. And you could keep going then with your different products. And I suppose it will work out then. You just go protected urea just to simplify it here for the remainder of the year. And maybe you might go in with a bit of K, with a bit of, something with maybe nitrogen and a bit of K maybe in the back end. But just for this one, we'll just fill it up here with protected urea. So I suppose, so it's just, we went for a different protected urea product here. There's only 38% nitrogen in it. And we need 0.9 of a bag there in, what month is that? In May, for example. And again, this is for the month. It's not per grazing rotation. And then I suppose that kind of, we can see then the difference there for the rest of the year then. You can see in August, I suppose we're down to 8%. We're hoping to get out 20 kilos. And then I suppose the last rotation there in September, the last application, I suppose we want to put out a good bit of nitrogen there in early September. So you can see, I suppose, down the bottom, as we apply the fertilizer, we can see that our total chemical nitrogen per hectare is increasing all the time until it comes up here to the figure of 250.
And it's not going to go over the 250, obviously, Micheál, because if it's set at that, sure.
Yeah, it won't go over the 250. And look, you can see the value is up here, 250. It's inside the box here that can be edited. So if you want to put in 200 and just click outside it, you can see here then that our number of bags have decreased.
Everything corrects once you change that top left figure there.
Yeah, and that again, this is just for the grazing paddocks.
Yes, of course, yeah. And then Micheál will say, I presume now, maybe a stupid question, but the way Mark Plunkett's work would suggest that your August spread is better than your September spread or your very early September spread. if you take out the month of September there, then it's obviously going to backload the September application into August. And again, it's the month figure again, so that's what you'd have to use in the month of August, I suppose.
Exactly. Yeah, you can increase this value here, this 8, and you can either put in 0 if you don't want to spread if you don't want to spread your fertilizer there in September. You are going to get a better response in August compared to September. Yeah, you're 100% right.
You could actually put that as 0 there now, and it would correct immediately in that point as well, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
No, that's very good. No, because from the point of view, that you're not going moving back a screen to try to change something to move forward again. That it's very responsive, obviously.
Yeah, and I suppose just one thing as well, that when you are just filling out the planner, just click on save up there every now and again, just in case anything does happen, that you have to go away from the computer, for example, for some reason, just to keep it saved, I suppose.
Yeah, there's a question in there, Micheál, know it's a good one, I suppose. Would it be better to have the fertilizer going out in rotation rather than the month allocation? With the outside in, could be difficult to work out, though.
Yeah, I suppose. Yeah, they're after answering the question. Maybe. Yeah, that I suppose it would be better per rotation. Yeah, I definitely agree with you. But I suppose it's just it's hard to calculate, I suppose, where different farms are, for example. Again, this is just the first phase of this. Again, this is not 100%. There will be tweaks will be needed, and look, his feedback from farmers and from advisors, I suppose, that we'll be taking on board to make those changes. And sure, who knows, maybe in a year's time we will be going down the rotation route. But again, I suppose if we come back to this time of the year, look, we're probably talking about a unit a day. So we're kind of saying, or 30 units a month, kind of a thing. So look, it's probably horses for courses maybe, but it probably would be better in the long run to go down the rotations route. Yeah.
I suppose the most important thing is the people that are on the call don't go away thinking that that's the application for the rotation as opposed to the month.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that it's per month. Yeah, and I suppose to come back to this, I suppose, look, every farm is different and every farm has different targets. And I suppose we know that there is big pressure coming on as regards chemical nitrogen, the level of it going out in farms. And I suppose, look, we need to be aware of what level of nitrogen is coming from our slurry. And I suppose the only way we know that is by going away and testing it, and to use it better. I suppose the recommendation or the limit is 250, but maybe it should be chemical nitrogen plus slurry should be equal to 250. Do you know what I mean? But there's different ways of looking at it. But definitely we need to get a bit probably smarter with our nitrogen application, I think.
And if you were to include a slurry application there now midway through the season, now having done your plan for your fertilizer already, will that auto adjust?
Yeah, so I suppose, look, just to finish off this, I suppose we're finished our grazing paddocks here, for example. You need to do exactly the same for your grazing plus silage paddocks. So you when do you want to spread your fertilizer, when do you want to spread your slurry, when you want to spread your fertilizer and the different types. And then I suppose the same here for the paddocks here, which have grazing plus a lot of clover in them. And you can just see it in, I suppose, in June, July, percentages are small, percentages of chemical nitrogen are small there during the summer. Just to bring your attention then, I suppose, look, there's 3 different reports up the top here. There's a slurry report, there's a chemical nitrogen report, and then there's kind of slurry plus chemical nitrogen. So if we go into the chemical one here, for example, and just scroll down, the blue, I suppose the blue figure here is the target, and the black figure here is the actual. So if we pull down here a small bit, we can see paddock 2, the target is to have 22 kilos of in put out. We've 0 here. We've actually 0 put out. because there's no fertilizer records on this particular farm. So I suppose it's important as well that you are recording fertilizer and slurry application on PastureBase in order to get, I suppose, the benefit of this nitrogen plan. So you can track on a per paddock basis what did you want to spread there. It's the 22 here in this case, and what you actually put out here, which will be the black value here in the brackets. So you can track that there as time goes on. As time goes on there, and I suppose you can print them and export them out and to put them up maybe on your whiteboard or wherever you put your list of jobs or whatever, so that everyone, I suppose, is able to see it, and they're able to see what product is going out on the particular month, and so there is 3 different reports there, but again they won't work unless you put in your fertilizer slurry applications. And again, probably the app is probably the easiest way of adding those records to PastureBase. And as you can see, I suppose we're on the browser here this morning. It's probably it's not available on the app. So again, you'd have to log into www.pbi.e in order to get this, in order to create this plan.
Does it feed back to the phone then afterwards once you have it done?
Not at the moment, but again, look, that will be something we'll probably have to do, yeah.
Okay, so just keep another question in there now. Will you be able to compare the actual fertilizer that you've spread to your plant at the end of the year? I think you more or less said yes there, in what you've been saying there. So as long as you record the applications, it is going to be able to tie back. And then there's, could the fertilizer report in units per acre be used to match the guidelines from ourselves and Teagasc, obviously, and subtotal at the 1st of April, etc.? So could you get it that you have your 100 units out for the 1st of May or your 70 units out combined for the 1st of April? And then another comment, I suppose, is could the report do a required P&K requirement taking into account bales taken off? It's right. A bit of homework for you now.
We're going into nutrient management planning there a bit. Look, I suppose we at the outset of this, I suppose we were just worried about, or we're just kind of trying to get a handle on nitrogen. I suppose we would have talked to a couple of groups, and I suppose we would have put out the question, where do you get your nitrogen targets, or how do you know how much nitrogen to apply per month or whatever? And I suppose the answers kind of came back. They weren't that comprehensive, I suppose. So I suppose we went to wade in and just put this together. As regards P's and K's, so look, we probably could give a recommendation. All right, probably.
The scope is there, but it's just making it all happen, isn't it? Because the soil samples can be included in it now as well.
Yeah, trying to tie all the information together. Yeah, it's a valid point. Yeah.
But I suppose, are there actually plans, Micheál, to tie in with NMP anyway? Or there was some talk about it at one point anyway. Yeah.
I suppose. Look, we're open enough in joining up with NMP Online. To be honest, look, NMP Online is a great tool, and there's a huge amount of information really in it. And I think it would be a big benefit for all guys on PastureBase if they had that information, I suppose, easily available to them. Yeah, definitely.
Okay, so there doesn't appear to be any other questions coming in. If anyone wants to ask anything, ask it now quickly. So it's probably no harm, Micheál, if people wanted to go back and do this now anyway, knowing what they have applied today as well, just to kind of see if they're to stick to their target, what do they have left for the rest of the year for the months of July, August and September, like?
Yeah, definitely. That would be to be well worth doing it, and you can just compare and contrast, I suppose, what went out as well earlier in the year.
Yes, absolutely. And I'd say, like, it's probably no harm even to do it from the point of view of playing around with that figure there that you have up on screen there under the total amount of chemical in at the 200, because it's a very real. I don't think there's any question mark about it, but there's going to be a reduction in chemical nitrogen next year from everything that we're hearing anyway. I'm sure you're hearing the same story. So people could be just changing it and tweaking it there just to see what are we going to have to deal with, or what are we going to have to work with next year, just to be focusing the mind on maybe trying to get used to it now. Even might be no harm for the rest of the year, like to cut back a little bit now if you haven't already cut back. Like,
yeah, so like growth is very good at the moment. You know, on average probably 80 across the country. So yeah, maybe, you know, there's a lot of silage in the yards and left over, and maybe they're in the big demand for silage. So it might be an opportunity maybe to reduce nitrogen a bit.
Yeah, absolutely. There's one question after coming in there now. How to change the percentage applied to each month to units applied on the planner?
Yeah, so I suppose if you go back here to the plan setup,
yeah,
and you can just change your percentages here. So for example, if we wanted to go 0 there, and then you were saying maybe not to go for the September application,
yeah,
and maybe put in more here in August. So if we could maybe go 15 here, you can kind of change it around that way there, put in 0. You can do that there on the setup page. Probably would be the easiest. So that's the first screen there of the plan.
You save that and you go through, and it'll tell you the units then.
Yeah, it'll tell you the kilos and tell you the units in on the next page.
Okay. Another one in, do urea levels in milk have any role in knowing if you're spreading enough nitrogen?
I'll leave that one to you, Stuart.
I suppose if you're spreading very high levels of nitrogen, it potentially can feed into it. I think we saw a few little high spikes in nitrogen in urea or milk urea nitrogens there when the growth came a couple of weeks ago, all right, because there was a kind of a build-up of nitrogen that wasn't after being used up. But in terms of, yeah, I don't know. I think your unit a day, as you've already said, Micheál, is probably the best guide that people can use. We actually have a few people that have gone less than a unit a day now in the last couple of weeks as well. And I wouldn't be relying on your milk urea nitrogen figure right now anyway in terms of a guideline for fertilizer application rates. And there's a lot going on. There's a lot happening there's a lot more moving parts in it than just the fertilizer applied, like.
Yeah, and I suppose interesting enough, look, I was just out with a group there in Tipperary yesterday, and this particular farmer that we were at, he had 2 paddocks beside each other. Both of them had a good percentage of clover in each of them, and he spread 100 kilos of 150 kilos of nitrogen on one paddock and 250 kilos of nitrogen on the other. And he seems to think that both of them grew the same amount of grass. They were, you know. He did apply dirty water or parlour washings to the one with less nitrogen, but I thought it was kind of a nice way of doing it, you know, that just to dip your toe into reducing the nitrogen
on a paddock, like, as opposed to taking the big leap of faith and doing it on the whole
exactly
farm.
Exactly.
I suppose like Deirdre's work here is obviously showing that it's feasible to drop to 150, like, but the clover has to be available to fix your nitrogen. So there's 2 elements to it, I suppose, and we're drifting off topic here now, and you have to go. But I suppose there's a small bit of priming of the soil nearly, and of the clover plant almost to survive on a little less nitrogen. And I'm kind of inclined to describe it like a drug. We're hooked on nitrogen as farmers in general, I think, and we need to start weaning ourselves off of it a small bit, like.
Yeah.
So cutting back when there's growth there, and like again coming back to stuff that Deirdre said, like if you've no, it's not a year, I suppose, that it's going to be very evident, but if you're cutting a lot of surplus bales and cutting surplus every rotation, then it would suggest that you're probably over applying nitrogen. But I don't think that's a good way of judging it this year because of the way the year has been. We've kind of very much peaks and troughs, troughs, and then a peak, more or less, to be honest. Like, so.
Yeah, it's a good way of putting it, all right. You know, nitrogen, I suppose, was historically a cheap enough product, I suppose, to apply, but you know, in recent times, I suppose it's a big cost on farms now, really.
Yeah, and like I suppose the other thing in terms of the environmental aspect of it, like just we're probably not recovering a lot of the nitrogen that is being spread on farms in terms of, unless we're really, really at the top of the game in terms of grassland management. A lot of farms are applying nitrogen grow grass that they're not actually kind of achieving at all. So maybe they might only be doing 8 rotations as opposed to maybe 9 or 10, obviously being the target. And that means that there's nitrogen surplus on the farm, and that's in excess of what we need. So there's definitely scope to cut back and without impacting.
Yeah, and just to finish up, Stuart, I suppose, look, another tool that we brought into PastureBase there a week ago was just a bit of mapping data. So if you log into PastureBase, go into farm weather, I just say leave to that. And I suppose you can set up, you can manage your weather settings here. So there are probably 3 different options in order to get weather information into PastureBase. You can get it from a local weather station. So these are Teagasc and Micheál weather stations, which are around the country. So you can choose whichever one is closest to you there. You can also record your own farm weather details. There's a lot of guys there now with measuring rainfall and soil temperatures, so you can add in your own figures for your own farm. And then the third and last option, then I suppose, if you put in the location of your farm, the lat long of your farm, we'll download in the forecasts and the actual weather figures for your particular farm.
That's all for this week's Let's Talk Dairy webinar series, and don't forget to look out for more bonus episodes each week. I'll be back with our usual Dairy Edge interview on Monday, so do listen in then. I'm Emma Louise Coffey, and thanks for listening.